You're listening to Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, your go-to gal for all things money. As the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind the Sassy Wealth Coach, I'm here to take you on a thrilling ride from the financial chaos to sassy and sexy money. Welcome back, my sassy friend, to another episode of Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind Sassy Wealth Coach, and of course, this podcast. And today with me, I have Colin Sanburg, and he is a multi-business owner and founder of Fin Elevate. This MBA-led strategic finance firm helps business owners use their numbers to make money rather than simply better categorizing their expenses. As a CEO and owner of manufacturing, distribution, and service businesses, he developed a passion for demystifying small business finance and supporting fellow entrepreneurs in achieving their dreams. And we're just going to kick it right off because we know this is Cashversations, right? Candid Cashversations. So, Colin, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. And can you tell me what you mean by helping them demystify for the audience so they know exactly what that means?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. So in simple terms, when business owners start to take on the financial side of owning a business, we're all trained through society in kind of the monthly flow of how we pay bills and how we have income and when we're an employee. When we become a business owner or, have a side hustle or whatever it may be, a lot of times it becomes a lot more complicated. And so what we like to do is break it back down into a story that's easy for people to understand. So if you run a profit and loss statement and it's 3 or 4 pages, people get lost in the shuffle there, right? And in reality, almost everyone knows, like, okay, I make, $5,000 a month and my bills are this, and like I'm either up or I'm down every month. Everybody can figure that out. But when we make it 3 or 4 pages long, everybody's lost. And then you add in the balance sheet or cash flow. And so part of what we like to do with my company is just bring it back to the story of the business. Like, how's the story that because you show up every day to work and you go through the motions and if we're having good sales or bad sales, we've got enough people or we don't have enough people or too many people. How's that reflected on the financials in a way that ties it all back for you?
So how do you break down the P&L or the financial statement so that they can see that, like, or even like the cash flow? Because like with my clients, I work with them and I showed them there's a difference between a P&L and a cash. Yes, you need to have you need to have your business in books. Yes, 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 and it tells you what's already happened.
Yeah.
The cash flow tells you what's happening in the moment, which is why it's so important to know your numbers and look at your bank account and be able to have all that information so that you can see the cash flow, because that happens like right now it's happening. Whereas the P&L, it's okay, this already happened. And yes, it's important to look at it because it helps you gauge, okay, where are you at? Is this aligned with where you're wanting to go? Do you have too many people, not enough people? Are you spending too much in an area? And that's kind of where, like, I like to have it break down and explain it.
Yep.
Do you break it down to where they understand, like they can see, okay, we're spending this much money here and that's not what we want to do. We're spending too much. So they need to make changes.
Yeah, no, I love that. So one of the things we do, we have what we call a simple profit formula, which is, it sounds like similar to what you're doing. We really break down the P&L into like 5 unique areas. So we've got labor, we've got overhead, we've got sales and marketing, we've got whatever our cost of goods or cost of product is. And so external vendors, let's say. So when we have it that way, to your point, it becomes kind of a quick diagnostic, like what's working and what's not. And then we dive deeper. One of the challenges with a 3 or 4 page P&L is that you've got big numbers, little numbers, and inevitably, and I've been there as a business owner in my other businesses, you get hung up on this one little number and you're like, I don't know what that is. Like, why? It starts driving you crazy. You're completely missing the big picture because you're hung up on this little detail. And so, yeah, I like that. But going back to your other point, I really love what I call the critical unit. So like, what is your number one core KPI? And frequently within a business, we try to make that like a lag measure. I'm sure you're familiar with like lead versus lag measures.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, your standard financial statements are lag measures. They're like, you did something over here that created this, and it's locked in. By the time you're looking at it on a P&L, it's historical.
Right.
So
It's done.
exactly. And so how do you build a better business by saying, well, I want my future to be better. I want the history of my future to be better. Like that, what does that even mean? And so what I tell people is if you were to go into work tomorrow and it's a busy day versus a slow day, not just for you as the owner, but for the whole company, what does that mean? And typically what that means is we're starting to get to the core of like, what is your core KPI? And it's usually we're busy because we're doing a lot of these. So if you were a restaurant, we've got a lot of people coming in today. We're quote busy. And so once we know, as simple as that sounds, for some businesses, they have a really hard time identifying what that might be. Once we know what busy looks like, what that one unit is that we can measure, we can then take it all the way through to the P&L and the balance sheet, but we can also take it backward into what are you doing for sales and marketing? You know, how efficient are you on that? And so like, as an example, I own a cabinet company. And for us, we centered it around like number of cabinets. We had a sales team that talked about like linear feet, how long your cabinets are. Like, oh, that house is going to need 36 feet of cabinets. That made no sense to anybody who was in the plant building cabinets.
Right.
So we're not even speaking the
Right.
same language.
How many cabinets, not how many feet, but how many.
Exactly.
E- Explain to the audience what KPI is. I know what it is,
Yeah.
but explain what it is, and then once you do that, can you explain how you can determine what your core KPI is, especially for like service-based entrepreneurs? Because
Yes.
like I'm a service-based entrepreneur.
Yep.
I don't have a product. So for us, we might find it even harder to determine what our core KPI would be.
Yes. So exactly. So KPI is just, key performance indicators, basically just meaning what
Mhm.
are the kind of core numbers that you need to know whether this business is trending in the right way or the wrong way. To your point, and where it gets really tricky. So I like to use a cabinet example because it's tangible and everybody can see like a cabinet. And then they can understand. So the sales team was talking about linear feet of cabinet. The manufacturing plant was thinking in terms of cabinets because that's how they actually made them.
And
And,
there's a disconnect in the communication there.
and then here's the really wild part. The install crew just thought how many jobs we have. So like, well, I'm going to 2 jobs today. So now we got 3 languages with something as simple as cabinets. So to your point, when we get into something that's a little more hard to define, like in a service-based business, good luck.
Mhm.
Everybody just determines it based on their job. So what I like to think of is what would be busy, right? And so in your service-based business, what is the work you need to get done? Like the operational work, not sales, not strategic thinking. Like what is the core effort you're doing on behalf of your current clients that if you did a lot more of, you would need to hire more people? That's a great indicator that we're like on to the right kind of area, right? And so sometimes in a service-based business, depending on what you offer, it may just be as simple as like the number of hours worked by your production team. And then what gets interesting though is that sounds so simple that people think it's not significant. Where it gets really good is when you say, okay, but what's a billable rate per hour? What's my cost per hour? What's the number of hours I got done per employee? What's the billable percentage of time in a 40-hour week that a person's able to actually have billable work being done? Well, now we're talking about efficiency and profitability metrics that are happening. Like these things aren't 45 days later, like the P&L. These are happening between now and lunch. And so now we
Right.
can kind of
Right.
bring this down to like one small unit that everyone can see. And then we can build efficiency and the right mindsets. And then it's like, well, should we invest in AI? Well, what would it do to our billable rate? What would it do to our billable cost? What would it do? And now we're having a real
To our
conversation.
time. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So I know I'm going to have some people who are going to be listening to this and go, but I don't bill per hour
Yep.
because I'm a perfect example. I don't bill
Of
per hour.
course.
I
Nor
have a
should you,
flat.
by the
I
way.
don't.
Nor should you.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. We got out of corporate for a reason.
Absolutely.
Okay. And there's a reason why I'm bringing this up because they're going to say, why am I listening to this? I don't charge per hour. I charge a flat rate. Yes. And I want you to explain to them, of course you don't, nor should you.
Yes.
But you should also be looking at that to determine if you are charging enough.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because like if you're spending 50 hours on one client and you're only charging $1,500 a month, I want you to do the math and figure out exactly how much you're making, because it's not all that much.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I know this because all of us at some point in time undercharge in
We've
service-based
all done
world.
it. We've all done it. Yep.
And when I sat down and actually did the math, I was like, holy crap, no. Because again, that's when you were actually starting, even though you're charging a flat rate, you were exchanging time for money.
Yes.
And so that's why you explaining that metric is so important, is even though you do charge a flat amount, you still want to see how many hours it takes you to do what you're doing for your client, so that you can make sure that it's on the right track.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And think about this too. We all appreciate our own time, but what about when we start adding team members and then we're playing the same game now with other people's time? Your employees don't want to spin their wheels. They don't want to do things that takes twice as long as it should. That's frustrating to anyone. It doesn't matter what position you are in the company. And so exactly to your point, most people don't recognize how much time it really takes to do certain things. And so if you're not tracking your time, it's exactly like, if I'm in my business selling cabinets, if we're not recording how much wood we bought to be able to build cabinets, we're not a professional cabinet company, right? And so likewise, if you're not recording how much time you're spending on your client work, you're not really doing it right. I know that sounds harsh, but that's the reality. And the same thing for your team. You've got to be able to get the team in a positive space about recording. Hey, I'm not trying to beat you up with these numbers. I'm trying to help make your job better with these numbers. I'm trying to help. We want to deliver more results to our clients with less effort. That's the whole name of the game.
Right.
And until I'm recording it,
Right.
I don't even have the beginning of that conversation.
Right. Right. And that's whether it's employees or contractors. Like, I have an OBM, and she even though she's a flat thing per month, she records her hours, because again, she wants, she'll come to me and she'll say, Lisa, this is the contract, this is what was given, and this is what we're doing. We're seeing that we're getting really close to this mark. So she's able to make sure she's staying within that time frame of her contract, right? And then my VA, she is billed by hour, and she's going to make sure that she can do the most in that time,
Yes.
right? And so we've already talked about giving her a raise because we've been giving her so much work, and she somehow has been doing it within the time frame, the hours. She's a godsend. It's because I absolutely adore her. And my ROI, when we talk about that and with KPI, they save me so much time.
Absolutely.
Because they do things so much faster than what I would do, because I don't want to do anything with the Canva. Me and Canva have a huge hate love relationship. It loves to hate me, and I don't like getting in it.
Yep.
It takes me hours to do something that my team can do in like 10 minutes. So yes, I'm going to pay them because they can do something in 10 minutes that would just cause me all this frustration. And I think it's important, even if it's a 1099, that what's going in, that you're seeing it, so that you can measure what's going into doing the stuff for your clients, especially if you have people who are contractors who also do work for your clients. So like I'm not a bookkeeper, but as part of my wealth coach and CFO, I have bookkeepers on my team. And so they do some of the work. So if we have someone who comes to me and, wants a CFO wealth coaching, and their books are like not being done, then I have team who can, we can get it fixed, and then we can start doing it. So that way it's all being done in one centralized location. And so having them track their hours is really important. Track their time is really important, because we want to make sure, like you said, we're giving the most effort for our clients or the most to our clients with the least amount of, with not a lot of time. We don't want it to take 60 hours.
Yep. Exactly. And I think that, that this point is really well made nowadays. We're seeing what's happening with AI and just the quality of technology to supplement the worker, right? We're a long ways off
Mhm.
from it just fully replacing everybody.
I don't think it'll
Yeah,
replace anybody. I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't wanna talk look, I don't like talking to automation. I hate talking to a robot,
yep,
so I promise you no bot is going to take over, like, posting for me or talking
e-
or doing that because I already get aggravated. I'm, like, constantly pressing 0. I want a real person,
exactly. Yeah, no, that was
you
that
know?
was exactly what I was
And
gonna say.
eventually the automation will go, "I'll transfer you to a real person," and I'm like, "It only took 10 minutes, but I don't care. That's how determined I am."
Yep, to break
When I
through.
get an automation, I do not want the automation. I need to talk. You can't answer me. I need a real person. So I don't think we're anywhere near that. But how explain so that they understand why we try. How does that affect knowing that core KPI?
Yeah, the beauty of the core KPI the way we look at it and the way I'm describing it is that it's in your everyday life, right? This is not, wait until the financials come out and see what happened last month. This is, I know how productive we're being, and once I understand that, I can optimize around it. And then when I'm and then take it all the way into sales, like I was saying with the cabinet example of 3 different languages. When you go to quote new work, it should really be looking at like, what would this critical unit, how many of these would we need? And would this justify hiring another person or not? It starts to bake all the way into the way you approach, marketing is what's my marketing cost per that unit to be able to generate new clients. And so it just becomes, and the reason I love it from starting at that operations piece, which is kind of in the middle of the story, is again, if we all showed up to work tomorrow, we had a team of 6 people, everybody knows this is going to be a busy week or not. Why? They already know that story. So if we could make that the core KPI, we're just giving them a different thing to call what they already knew. And now when we go to explain financials, it's like, well, here's our revenue. It represents this many of those critical units. And people go, oh, okay, now I understand what revenue is. Here's what our cost of goods is per critical unit. And now they go, okay, I get it. And so where that's the demystifying piece, right? When you take what would think people would think of as like, well, that's really complicated. If I can explain to my frontline team how much inventory we have in not in dollars, not in stacks of material that they can't possibly wrap their mind around all at the same time, how many cabinets worth of material do we have? And they go, wait a minute, why do we have 3 weeks worth of work? Because I already know how many cabinets we make a day, how many we make a week. Now all of a sudden this kind of conceptual idea of we don't want to have too much inventory becomes immediately real when I say we have 3 weeks worth and we get deliveries every day. And they go, whoa, wait a minute. You don't have to be an inventory specialist to know that seems
Right.
unnecessary. So now I can immediately translate any part of the business that normally business owners are trying to make progress on into a language that everyone on the team understands.
Which in turn is looking at your cost. What you're saying is basically looking at your costs and saying, okay, are we spending too much in costs in this area when we don't need it? Right.
Yes.
Or um, have we bought, for example, too many cabinets when we don't have the clients yet to install them? Because yes, you want to have some inventory, and at the same time, you also don't want to have weeks and weeks and weeks of cabinets or supplies, and you don't have the clients to sell
E-
it. Um,
Exactly. And then
because that affects that y'all affects your
big time,
money.
big time, because that's cash,
It
right?
affects your cash.
Yep.
It affects your money. It affects your cash, and you may not see it like right away. Especially if you're solo based, it still applies, just slightly different. And I'll be the first to tell you, you may not see it right away. Give it a couple of months, and you'll all of a sudden go, "Why is this low?"
Yep.
And now you're backtracking 2 months to figure it out because you weren't looking at those core things the whole time.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm guilty. Um, Guilty a couple of times. I'm somewhat better at it. I'm working on getting better at it. And I know that when I look at all of my numbers, my cash flow, and I look at everything, I am able to stay on top of what's going on with my money. And that's the whole, if y'all get nothing out of that except that, the whole point of that KPI is just for you to stay on top of your numbers in a different way so that it all makes sense for your with your cash flow and your P&L. Because if all of a sudden you're realizing your P&L is less, or you don't have as much money, you're going to need to know, okay, how much were my expenses this month versus last month? Why was there a dip? Was revenue less or more? And being able to know that is what's going to help you be able to make whatever changes needs to be tweaked.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I know I'm using an example of something physical, but many of your listeners, I'm sure,
Yeah,
are in
but
service companies.
we do it now, right? And we do analogies all the
Of
time.
course.
So
Yeah. And
yeah,
so with a service-based business, I like to think of it as, let's say that you've got one person on your production team and you have 120% of, 20% extra beyond what they can get done. When you realize that if I go hire a person, I'm going to immediately not be profitable effectively, because now I have to pay for two people to do only 120% worth of work. That doesn't make sense. And if I bring that back and the team is now helping me solve that. And that's where, just like you were talking about earlier, we start looking about outsource opportunities. Is there some other way that I can be more scalable versus hiring a full-time person that I can't yet afford? Because that's, I'm sure for you too, that's one of the number one questions we get asked. Can we
well,
afford another person?
yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, and see, and my OBM, she manages the whole social media, right? So our goal is eventually to have two more VAs. We'll have three VAs. She's going to
yep,
oversee them. And in the shift in my business, it was looking like, okay, um we need to hire another VA. And it was okay. I just hired a podcast team because I started my podcast. I can't, looking at the numbers, no, we cannot do another VA. So we met and it was like, okay, what can we have the podcast team do versus what she can do and what the VA could do? And basically take it to where I'm not doing it all. I'm doing a small part of it and it's divided between three until we can
yep,
hire another VA. So it's like, it's exactly what you're saying. And that's the key is because if you know, okay, if we hire another VA, we're looking at another amount. Now all of a sudden it's not strategic. You're not making enough money. It doesn't make sense. And that's where it's going to lead me to, um, like that pricing and margin and making, you say painful decisions, but I'm going to say making the hard decisions, because as a CEO, right? Someone once told me, think about the hard decisions you're making and how awesome it is that you get to make those hard decisions, because that means you're the owner of the business and you're looking at your money and how much money you'll be making versus you're an employee and you're having to depend on people, right? Um, and so making those hard decisions, and it could be whether or not to take on debt temporarily with the business, or instead of hiring someone, paying down the debt first. Let's talk about that. How does that look like, or how do you, how have you gone through it, or how has a client gone through it? How have you helped? I want my clients or my audience to understand, that the cash realizations and the money, and it involves just more than the money in your bank. It involves you looking at all aspects of the business, like the KPI, now the debt, and making those hard decisions.
yeah, I love that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the beauty and the challenge of being CEO of a company, being the owner, is that you're tasked with making decisions that, when people love to say, like, that's above my pay grade. Welcome to the
You
party.
can't say that
Welcome to the
anymore.
party. Nothing is any longer is above your pay grade, right? So like, there's no passing the buck. And
Right.
to your point, so my first two companies are manufacturing companies, and in that world, people have to learn to have some sort of a relationship with debt and how to do it the right way, because it's not really feasible to say, well, we're going to grow by waiting until we have so much cash in the bank that we can just buy 6 and 7 figure pieces of equipment.
Right.
You really
But we're not going to ever charge anything on a credit card ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think that everything has the right time and place, and there's kind of the right application for anything. From my experience, my opinion, the right way is, hey, the only relationship I have with credit cards is to get me points, miles, cash back. I like cash back best. That is the only relationship I want to have with credit cards. I never want to see. I don't even care what percentage they claim they will charge me if I ever miss a payment. I'm on auto pay. I'm just rocking and rolling, paying the bill in full every time. That's the only relationship, because it's dangerous to play it another way. And so my belief is, with every type of debt or every type of tool that's allowed to give you money that's not your money for use, if you use it the wrong way, there are huge penalties. If you use it the right way, it can help you make more money. So
yeah, I mean, because you've got millionaires, and billionaires who leverage debt. And a perfect example is, I have a client who was going through an issue. She's a therapist, and the clearinghouse was taken hostage, and all these doctors and therapists, all of a sudden, they're not getting reimbursed from the insurance because they can't submit the claims because the clearinghouse was taken hostage. And, they were ransom, whatever. It was resolved, great, but it took 2 months for it to be resolved.
Yep.
So you got to think about it. She's got employees of 15 people, right? She needs to still pay them. She's like, Lisa, what do we do? I said, you have a line of credit for a reason.
Yep.
So yes, did she carry a balance on her line of credit? Yeah. Did she charge more on her credit card? Absolutely. Did she carry a balance for a few months? Yes, she did. And we were strategic about it. We didn't use it unless it was absolutely necessary. And if we needed it, we used it. And then over 3-4 months, we paid it off. Does she keep a balance on her credit card? Yes, a small one. Yes. And as the key is what you said, Colin, is you have to be responsible and be strategic. Do I have a balance on a credit card right now? Yes, my business has some major shifts. I have more of a balance than I normally do, and I'm okay with it because I'm being very, very, very strategic with it.
Yep.
And I've had to make some of those hard decisions. Do I charge this on a credit card so that my business can keep making these shifts and keep growing? Or do I just sit back and just say, okay, I'm going to wait for the money to come in? Sometimes to keep going, you need to be able to do that. And you've got to be responsible with how you do it. That's where I always say there's that fine line. And I love points and miles and cash back. And, if I do have to use the balance, this is what I've done the last few months, is whenever there's this cash back balance on there, it reverts back to the card.
Yep, exactly.
I don't use it for anything else. It reverts back to the card. People are like, why? Because I'm carrying a balance. If I'm carrying a balance, I do not get to use the cash for anything else except to go back to the card. And that lowers the balance on the card. So, why wouldn't you? Hello. Now, if you don't have a balance, then go use it for whatever you want to buy. I mean, be my guest. Yep. I have. But while I'm carrying a balance, that's what I do. And that's just a rule that I've set for myself, because I'm like, okay, if I'm carrying a balance, then the cash back has to go to the card. And it works because, again, it's free money.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And I think, from my perspective, money, whether it's in business or personal, is all about mindset and discipline. And that's really it.
Yep.
And to your point, you have to have the right mindset around things. That's kind of the front end. On the back end,
you have to have the discipline.
Yes,
though.
we have to have the discipline.
And
part of discipline, like you said, is if I've got a mindset around, okay, I'm doing this. Maybe it's not ideal, but it's what I need to do right now. But I'm going to have this discipline. I'm going to put in basically a rule that says, because of that, here's what I'm going to do with my points or miles or whatever. Those are
and you turn around and put a plan in place on how long it's going to take you to pay it.
Yes.
To pay it down.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I'm big on that, because if you're not putting a plan in place and you're just charging willy-nilly, then you are creating bad debt. debt is a necessary thing in business, especially from time to time. And you have to be disciplined. You have to have the right mindset around it. And you need to make sure that you're being responsible. And to me, knowing your numbers, knowing the KPI, knowing the cash flow, that's what helps you know your numbers so that you can put a plan in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm, I always say we should be able to figure out how this business is going to be profitable on the back of a napkin. Like, I need to know what my path to profitability is, and I need to know at what size, how profitable I will be. And if you don't have that type of plan within your business and you're just kind of thinking like, I just got to keep hustling and getting more revenue, we help clients like that. That's where we find certain clients is they say like, no matter how much I sell, we never make money. Okay. We've got to get,
Why?
we have to get your numbers in shape. You have to understand what you're actually doing.
That's when that's when I want to go digging. That's when I want to go deep diving into bank accounts
Yep.
and find all the money leaks because, okay, if you're making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars and you have you're not making money,
we got a problem.
Exactly. You've got there's money leaks. I don't care if they're small or big, but you got money leaks.
Yeah.
And you have to know what's going on with your money. That's just a huge must. You have a free offer for my listeners. Will you please tell them about that? And of course, we will make sure the link for this is in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we love to do is just like you, I'm sure, meet new business owners. We work with a lot of different types of companies, coaching companies. We've got wealth management firms, we got manufacturers, we've got all different variety of companies. And so what we like to do is, get to know a business, give them at least a 45-minute session. But I'm an entrepreneur. Like I own other businesses. I love to meet entrepreneurs. I love to talk with them, love to help them. I got into this not because it was some sort of a money grab, but because I was already enjoying doing this with my friends. And so, yeah, we love to meet people. Anybody who wants a free 45-minute, we'll do a deep dive. And ultimately, we'll help unearth, like you said, whether it's a money leak or whatever. We'll get to, believe it or not, in 45 minutes, we'll get pretty intense down to the core of.
Oh, I can find it.
Yeah,
I can find
exactly.
it. I can find it.
and a lot of times people kind of have an idea. They just don't want to face it. So if you need me to be that
but
mirror,
they don't want to admit it. Yeah.
Yep. If you need me to be that mirror held up to your face, and we'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. My sassy friend, if you get anything out of this, is the importance of knowing all aspects of your business, all the numbers of your business. And that's the reason why we talked about the KPI. That's the reason why we're talking about the cash flow. When you don't have that information, you can't make strategic and CEO decisions to decide on how you're going to grow your business or to decide if you're going to put something on a credit card to grow your business or whatever. Because when you have all that information, including what ROI or whatever in the investment, that's when you're able to make those decisions so much more strategic. And I'm sure Colin will tell you, I'm sure he's learned the hard way. I know I've learned the hard way, which is the reason why I've started the podcast, which is the reason why I do what I do, because I want to help other people not have to be able to, to struggle, especially women entrepreneurs. But all of us, because I believe that entrepreneurs is what's gonna, I don't know, it's what it's gonna help change the world, because we're going to be able to do so much more as long as we do it responsibly, and that's part of that is just knowing your numbers. Thank you so much, Colin, for being on the show. I appreciate you taking the time. You sound like me. We could go for days
I know.
talking about the numbers. I tell people all the time, yes, I'm weird, and it's okay.
Yep. Hey, we're all our own brand of weird.
I'm sassy, southern, and weird, and yes, I can talk about it all day long and not face a thing. And other things, I'm like, I don't want to talk about that, but I can talk about this all day.
Yep.
But thank you very much for being on the show. I truly appreciate you taking the time out. And my sassy friend, until next time, remember to stay sassy, and we'll see you later. Bye. Thanks for joining us this week on Cash and Sass. Check us out on social media and on our website at www.thesassywealthcoach.com, where you can download my free Money Story Start Guide. The website again is www.thesassywealthcoach.com. And as always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. And remember, yes, it is possible to have sassy and sexy money. See you next week.